emotion and pageantry of college football lives here. This is the Paul Finebaum Show, Hour 2 podcast.
This might be college football heaven. We are back. Great to have all of you on board. And the second hour has arrived. The first hour we talked a lot about the CFP, but I want to change gears because this story has been percolating, and we're about to talk to the writer of the story. This is a story from SI.com. Inside the gambling ring allegedly linked to point shaving across pro and college football. This is really interesting. It has been out there for a while. You've seen Temple's name mentioned. You've seen a number of other names mentioned. And the great investigative reporter Mike Rosenberg joins us. Mike, first of all, thank you very much. Appreciate you making time for us.
Thanks for having me on, Paul.
So I realize it's always unfair just to say, hey, well, what's all this about? Because I just explained it. But it goes pretty deep. It's pretty expansive. Give us an overview of where it is right now. And first of all, how did it all come about?
Yeah, well, this kind of come out in sort of drips and little pieces where there have been investigations, so-and-so suspended, they're looking into gambling. The most we know about any specific situation so far is Jonte Porter, who had significant gambling debt, according to himself in his plea deal, a gambling problem, and he decided to erase the debt by basically rigging his own prop bets for his own performance in NBA games. And that would have worked, honestly, just fine, except that the people who he was rigging it for were way too aggressive and undisciplined in how they tried to capitalize on that. One of the wagers was for a payoff of $1 million, and nobody is betting that much on a Jonte Porter prop bet. And so that raised interest, and then they found text messages, and he has since, again, reached a plea deal. And this has spread, and through the story, we found a ton of betting slips worth millions of dollars. The Eastern District of New York U.S. Attorney says that this is a nationwide network with millions of dollars in money laundering, with straw bettors throughout the country. The only 4 people who have been indicted so far are all based in New York and Pennsylvania, which should give you an idea that the nationwide network has not remotely been exposed yet. And so this is at 6 or 8, I think, colleges. We heard about Fresno State and New Orleans this weekend. It's going to be more and more. This is going to get, I think, significantly bigger, and it's going to touch a lot more programs than people realize.
There's always been a concern about point shaving, especially now that gambling is so pervasive. But to my recollection, we haven't had that many. I mean, there was the Boston College 40 years ago, and Tulane, and a couple of other ones that were pretty bad. But in terms of how it actually went down, in terms of the way it worked, can you? I know that's not an easy question to briefly describe the nuts and bolts of what happened, but what can you share with us?
Yeah, well, the Jonte Porter one, we do know how that worked, right? And we know these same people are tied to suspected point shaving, not confirmed, with several college teams. And again, when I say I expect it to get wider, I expect the investigations to get wider. What ends up confirmed, we'll see. But if you look at the blueprint from Jonte Porter, he falls behind to some real shady people with really dark criminal pasts, and they then lean on him to rig his own performance. Well, if you can do that with an NBA player where they can potentially make millions of dollars in salary, it's going to be a lot easier to do that to a college player, right? And gambling right now is everywhere. Like it used to be, in order to rig a game, it's kind of some usually connection to organized crime. You needed to know a bookie, all this stuff. Now these guys can bet on their phones. They can bet in there's just so many more ways that they can get into gambling, which makes it obviously easier to fall behind in money. And I'm not saying that that's what happened in every location, but this is a criminal ring allegedly that has done this. And if they did it once, there's no reason to think they would stop at one or stop even at a half dozen. So we'll see how wide it gets. But I think if people kind of look at it objectively, it's not that hard probably to do if you want to do it. It only takes a few guys in college basketball. They don't, on some of these levels, have a ton of money. They can gamble. They can be, have pressure put on them in a number of ways, and there's a payoff there for them. So once you realize it's easy to execute, you understand why it's probably going to be pretty widespread.
Like I remember it was maybe 2 years ago during the college baseball scandal that the Alabama coach got implicated in. There was another one, I think it was in Iowa or somewhere, but it seemed like they had a lot of they had things within the system that really were able to lead them to it. In terms of college basketball, and maybe even more general football as well, I mean, what kind of teeth do these organizations have to be able to get to the bottom of it quickly?
Well, it really kind of does depend on which organization you mean. I mean, I think people, again, I think it's easier to do this now because gambling is legal in so many places, but it's also there are more mechanisms to catch you. I mean, these casinos all have systems in place. If the lines move, which is what happens when somebody wagers a lot of money, they notice. And if there's unusual movement, it triggers a lot of interest. I mean, casinos aren't really into the business of just letting people kind of rig bets against them. And so um, there's a lot of sort of mechanisms in place for this. And uh, how the NBA, for example, has investigated. They're limited; they don't have subpoena power. But when it comes to criminal acts, it goes beyond the NBA, goes beyond the NCAA, and that's why quite a bit of this is already kind of coming out. And I guess you can look at it one of two ways: one, wow, how did this happen? But two, they are basically starting to catch some people. So I guess you can look at it, half glass full, half glass empty, glass
Uh,
half empty.
I mentioned football. I know you've covered a lot of football as well. I realize this is more uh, up in the ether, but is football more complicated? I mean, I know it is to a degree. But what do you know in relation to the concern about college and pro football, for that matter, about point shaving? It's a much more complex situation, obviously.
Yeah, we have not had any indication that this involves football at all. And I think it's, if you think about it, I mean, there are five players on a basketball court, right? And there are what, 22 starters plus special teams in football. So you need more guys theoretically. I guess you could have the quarterback. If we go back to the Art Schlichter days at Ohio State, you could have a quarterback, but it's harder to do in football. When it's harder to do, it becomes less incentive to even, I think, try to do it. I think the other thing that is a real concern, frankly, to the sports books is not so much fixing games in football, but information getting out. So and so is injured, they're not playing, and that can happen really at any level of the sport. And then you realize the line does not reflect what it should because this quarterback is out. So I think that's probably more the concern, more likely scenario in football than actually rigging the game.
Just before you go, and I realize you're here because of your reporting, not because of you being a betting analyst, but you mentioned the line moving. You said big bets move the line. I mean, we know people are monitoring that every in the nanosecond world, but what does it take to move a line in any sport for that matter?
Well, so this is an interesting thing. First of all, one thing that people are looking at, there are first half lines, right? You can bet on the so and so is getting, 3 points over the first half of the game and maybe 6 points for the game. Okay. Well, there can be an inverted line where there's so much action on the first half that it doesn't really make any sense. All of a sudden, this team is now getting, 7 points in the first half and six for the game. That's obviously a red flag because that shows that people are wagering on the first half of the game in a way that doesn't really make any sense. If the line moves, or if you're at a sports book and you've seen the line move and there are better deals for that line on that game at other sports books, and somebody is still very willing to bet a lot of money on that game with your line, they're not even shopping for the best line, that would be a red flag. Okay. And again, it's easier, I think, to put pressure on people that have less money and less, fewer means of earning income, right? That's just logic. Well, in college basketball, that would make it easier on mid-major players than it would be at, for example, somebody in the top five who's maybe has an NBA future. Well, there's also less money wagered on those games, so line movement would be more significant based on the same size bet as it would be for a Duke, North Carolina or something, and so it would be more likely to be revealed. And again, I think if people are extremely disciplined, honestly, and they keep a very small circle, they probably can get away with this. But these particular people apparently were not.
Mike Rosenberg, who's done some amazing work with Pat Forty and others for SI. Many thanks, Mike. Appreciate you cluing us in on what has been going on down there. It's just great to see some legitimate investigative reporting going on. We will take a short break. More of your phone calls right around the corner.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We are back. A lot of really good guests so far, and we're not done yet. Let's continue with your phone calls. Robert is up next in Kentucky.
Hey, Paul. Just wanted to let you know I'm 66 years old, a construction superintendent for 45 years, and I've never seen anybody. I thought I was good at it, but I've never seen anybody handle people the way you handle them. The tiff that's going on between Jim and I-Man, you've handled it well, my friend.
Thank you. Robert, number one, I appreciate you saying that. How many years did you say you've been in the construction world?
45 years.
Wow. That's not exactly an easy field.
Nope. I just retired 2 years ago.
Did you really?
Yes.
Okay, you know what my next question is. What's it like?
Go ahead with it.
Tell me. Randy wants to know before me, but I want to know too. What's retirement like?
Retirement is good. I'm glad to get up every morning. Of course, I live in Kentucky, and I'm glad to get up every morning and not have to go to work out in the bitter cold and stand out there all day.
Oh my goodness. I am curious about this because I'm currently in the middle of a couple of things that involve people in your industry. How evolving over the many years, how much more difficult is it today or whenever you last worked 2 years ago in managing people than going back in time? Or is it?
It is. It's crazy. When I first started, I started as a laborer and worked myself up. I started as a laborer, worked myself up to a carpenter, and I took blueprint classes. I took everything I could do to get ahead. I grew up in a construction family,
right,
carpenter family, and I took every class I could take, transit and all that stuff, to get to where I was at when I left. And when I started, the field of industry with construction workers, you could pretty much, when I started, they would fire a guy today and they'd have somebody else serve them all. Today, you can't do that. There's nobody out there that wants to do it.
That's amazing. Well, first of all, it is difficult. I mean, I don't think people have any earthly idea. You alluded to the weather, but just the risk and the danger is enormous.
Oh, yeah, it is. And I guess for that reason, I don't know. I had my sons when I was, I don't know, it's probably been 30 years ago. I had my sons help me pour my driveway with my concrete, and I told them point blank, I said, if you don't want to do this for a living, you better get an education.
Right. Wow.
And they both did.
Well, that is amazing. Well, I thank you for saying that and sharing your story.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing, and like I said, I've listened to you for years, and between I-Man and Jim, I think you're handling it very well.
Well, thank you, Robert. You take care of yourself. Appreciate it very much. You be well. You ever done construction? Yes. Really? Yeah. When I was like in my 20s, I dated a carpenter once. I don't know why I said that, but I just thought of it. I have not thought of her in a long time. I hope she's. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't. Every time I was with her, I just kept. Well, I don't know who did that song. If I Were a Carpenter and You Were a Lady. Remember that? Was that song? If I Were a Carpenter. Carpenters have to be great with their hands. Trey is up next.
Hey, Paul. I was going to talk to you about Alabama basketball game last night, but I think it's a more important thing to talk about today. Paul, Jim's anger, and it's bad, seems to be angering a lot of us. And I just wish people would understand, and I understand the anger because I've gone at Jim before, but Jim needs some help. And I thought the way I-Man handled Jim today was simply amazing. And Paul, in life we all go through problems, and I've had my share of health problems. But your show and what it does for people is simply amazing at times. But we need to pray for Jim and quit letting his anger spread among all of us callers, because it's so easy. It's so easy to get angry at others. I mean, that's usually our first reaction. But it's a lot harder. But you feel better if you just try to understand that that's what that person is going through, and that there's really nothing we can do about it. We're not going to change Jim, but we can change the way we react to what Jim says. So I'm not a big fan
Trey,
of Jim.
you live in Tuscaloosa or in that area, don't you?
Yes, sir.
Maybe would you mind being the maybe you since you're not far from him, maybe you can sit down with him and help him.
I would love to sit down and try to help him, Paul. I mean, I don't dislike a lot of things he says. This is my point, Paul. I've had my share of health problems, and I'm just not going to let somebody else take away my happiness in life. God has offered me too many other things in my life that I have a chance to be happy with, and there's nobody on this show, you or anybody, that's going to change the way I'm going to react to things. Ultimately, our reactions are our responsibilities. And we can allow others to take away our happiness, or we can just understand we can't change it. Jim needs some help. And I understand the anger, and Legend and I-Man yesterday, and I think I-Man has handled it terrifically.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the man's life is on the line, and you got somebody saying that. That's got to be very, very hard to accept and do. But I do want to tell I-Man, I have an offer for him if he'll reach out to me. And I think he'll like it, but I also like to talk some music with him. But I have a really good offer, man. But Paul, I really think we need to change our attitude towards Jim and just pray for Jim. And I don't like it, and it's hard to do.
Well Trey, I'm going to do something. I'm going to follow your lead. I've tried to do it, and I keep struggling with the devils, the demons, whatever is stopping me. But I
Paul,
think you have
hard.
just laid it out.
Yeah, Paul, it's hard to do, but we got to have our faith and understand that we cannot control what others do. And if we try to, then ultimately we're not going to be happy ourselves, Paul. And we can't let their unhappiness take away from our unhappiness. And I'll talk to you about basketball tomorrow, but I just want to say to I-Man and Legend, I love you guys. You're in my prayers, and you take care of yourself. And thank you for taking my call, Paul.
Thank you very much. We'll head to the break. We want to talk some college football, Georgia style. Good friend of ours will be joining us. The subject could venture into what happened last night, the spring game, even how well Mike Bobo is doing at Georgia.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Well, what a day on Saturday. Games all day long. It ends with OU at Texas. Where have I heard that before? We are back, and we head north to Indianapolis. Brooks Austin, we've talked to many times about the Dogs. He's up there covering the Combine, and he just put out a tweet yesterday saying that Mike Bobo is the offensive coordinator Kirby Smart has chosen to employ. Georgia fans, but there's a mythical being calling plays out there that has a better PR agent. I think he's better, so we should fire our guy now and hire the mythical possibility I think is better. A lot of conversation about Bobo. We had our famous caller here, Brad, unload on Bobo. I was on a radio show in Atlanta the other day. Bobo came up. I just flippantly said Kirby Smart should move on, and there has been a lot of reaction, Brooks. Obviously, you're in the Bobo camp. Give us, obviously, what Kirby Smart thinks is Bobo continues to remain as the offensive play caller.
Look, it's unfortunate that I've gotten pitted myself as this Bobo defender, as this guy that I guess has opinions about how good Bobo is. I just don't think he had a fireable season last year, Paul. I think there were a litany of reasons as to why Georgia didn't perform at the rate that most people expect them to, like yourself expects them to. Not last of which, but way down that line would be play calling or offensive design or anything like that. Mike Bobo has been running the last 2 years the same system schematically that Todd Monken was running at the University of Georgia during his 3 years here as offensive coordinator. So when I study the film, it's kind of what I've been known for in the space. When I study the film, I saw more execution-laden problems that led to lack of success on the offensive side of the football, far more to do with that than, hey, we're just not calling good plays. They were calling relatively similar plays as they had the last 3 years or the previous 3 years under Todd Monken. And it's also a deterioration of talent on the roster, in my opinion. If you look at that 2023 performance that they had with Mike Bobo as the first year as offensive coordinator back at the University of Georgia, I mean, but they broke the Todd Monken standard for offensive performance. They scored more points per game. They led the nation in third down efficiency in 2023. They came up short in an SEC title game and got cut out of a college football playoff. And then this year they followed it up with a lackluster performance, particularly to start off, offensive performances to start football games. I think that criticism is warranted, but to just be up here like, hey, there's got to be somebody better out there. I just don't know if that's the case based off of what we've seen.
Well, it did seem, and I don't follow it like you do, I just kind of fly in and fly out, but the wide receiver room, for whatever reason, seemed inferior, and I don't know whose fault that is, but that seems like that was a big part of the issue. So whose fault is that?
Yeah, I mean, let's start with the off-the-field concerns first and foremost. When you lose your starting two X receivers, Colby Young and Ra Thomas, to off-the-field concerns within the first 3 weeks of a college football season, and now all of a sudden we got to move Dylan Bell over there to X after spending the whole entire offseason getting him away from that position and getting him back into more of a versatile utility role. I think that plays a major impact. You lead the nation in drops. I think that plays an impact. Tate Ratledge goes down with an injury. Jared Wilson goes down with an injury. Ernest Green's playing with half an arm most of the season. I think that has a large, reason to do with some of the lack of performance on the offensive side of the football. So there's a litany of reasons. I do think the verifiable, at least in my opinion, criticisms for the offense at the University of Georgia, I think you can certainly get more diverse in your run game. And certainly the starts to college football games, the start of the seasons or games need to get better at the University of Georgia. But I can't tell you how many times last year, Paul, that they started games on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 with drops. And now all of a sudden we're bringing the punt unit on. And of course we're bad in the first half. We can't get offensive possessions rolling because we can't catch the football. That was a primary point of concern last year for the University of Georgia.
Talking to Brooks Austin, let's talk a little bit more about the spring, what's ahead. First, the quarterback situation. How do you break that down?
Yeah, I think it's always good for college football programs to enter the spring with the veteran guy, in that first position, right? In my opinion, in college football, your best bet is that your highly touted junior or highly touted senior that's waited his turn, like Gunnar Stockton has the ability to lose the job, if you will. So I think you go into the spring knowing that 14's your guy. And honestly, I think he played really, really well in that Notre Dame football game, considering what they asked him to do. A lot of tight window throws against a defense from Notre Dame that plays really, really tight man-to-man coverage. Thought he performed admirably in that football game, but certainly there's a tremendous talent waiting in the wings with Ryan Puglisi. That's a 6'3", 225-pound athlete that the word that I would use to best describe Ryan Puglisi is horsepower. Okay, he can just do things physically that a lot of quarterbacks can't. It's a matter of getting him reps. It's a matter of making sure he's playing turnover-free football. He's protecting. He's seeing the field well. All those things that come with young quarterbacks that have to get onto the field to play. But I've always been under the belief that it is best that the old guy play his way into the NFL before the young guy pushes him out.
And the decision, we learned yesterday that there will be a spring game. Expound on that, because so many others are not.
Yeah, I think Georgia has made it a point to notice that, hey, some of our fans, the only football game that they're actually able to afford to get to is that spring game. They charge about, I think, $5 last year was admission price to a University of Georgia spring game, whereas I don't think you can pay less than $150 to get into the door, even when Tennessee Tech's, in town. And coming up this year, man, they ain't got nothing but big time football games at home in Athens. So I think that is a testament to Georgia's athletic administration department making it known that, hey, we're not going to take this away from some of our fans. I also think across the sport of college football, Paul, everybody's talking about protecting the roster from poaching, all that stuff. Nobody's talking about the fact that, and you know this, Paul, there's a rev share model coming down next year. So what do we do if we have a budget that's taking a dang near $21 million hit? Well, we're going to look at the things that cost us money. The spring game at a lot of these SEC programs, Paul, is a net loser and a big one in terms of the financial budget. It's a game day environment. It's a game day cost for all those guys, and they're not charging a bunch of admission for it. So if I were an athletic administrator or an athletic director, and I'm looking at the budget, I'm saying, oh my gosh, what is this big red over here that's going to cost us this? Coach, that's the spring game. Well, we might be getting rid of the spring game and blaming it on poaching, Paul.
Well, speaking of money, Georgia saved itself potentially a lot of money last night. One of the biggest basketball wins in recent history. We saw Josh Brooks, we saw Kirby Smart go all in to make sure that the students did not storm the court. By the way, I'm all for students having a good time, but it was extraordinary to see those two in the moment. This is Kirby Smart telling, first of all, I'm glad he's at the game. He's working hard, and Brooks pretty much stopped fans from going in.
Yeah, no, that's another example of athletic administration department understanding just how important the fiscal budget is, right? I think it's a $150,000 fine in the SEC. It's a six-figure fine for storming any field or any court while the opposing team is still on the playing field. So, yeah, that's not only a courtesy, a sportsmanship, if you will, from Georgia and athletic administration department there, but also a smart fiscal decision to make sure we're not out here burning a six-figure fine celebrating a win. We can celebrate it after the 90 seconds they have to walk off the court. Also, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, Paul, Kirby got out of there pretty early, too. That video that went viral is actually him as they're escorting Florida fans out. Kirby and his family actually got out of there just before the storming of the court.
I don't blame him. I might have left after they blew the lead. That's how confident I was of them coming back. Brooks, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much reporting to us live from the Combine as we take a break here. More of your phone calls straight ahead.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back. Let's check in with John, who is up next. Hey, John.
Hey,
John.
Paul, how you doing?
Oh, we're doing great. Thank you.
Hey, I just wanted to call in and talk about some Auburn football for you.
Okay.
Obviously all the talent that Hugh Freeze has acquired, this off season and everything. I wanted to get your opinion of what might can we expect for this season coming forward?
Well, it's a critical season. I think everyone knows that, and I feel pretty good about Auburn. I don't think the schedule is that challenging. I like having the biggest game of the year at home. That's a spot that Auburn has had great success in. Baylor, tricky beginning. Still think it's winnable, though. Baylor's been a very inconsistent team, so I think it's a matter of managing the first 6 weeks of the year. I think it gets much easier after Georgia when you have, I like having that game at home, by the way. Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mercer. I mean, those are all very winnable games. So I think if I had to guess right now, I think Auburn's going to have a very good season.
Right. Okay. And another question for you. I think we got 2 transfers at quarterback, and Deuce Knight, obviously going to be a freshman. Who do you think has the best chance of winning the starting position?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think that is wide open. What about you?
I'm not sure. I like Ashton Daniels from Oklahoma.
I'm
also,
sorry.
Let
me correct myself. I was thinking Jackson Arnold is going to be the starter. I apologize. I was in a fog there for a minute. But no, I don't think there's any question he will be the guy. And
Yeah, Jackson
I
Arnold,
think
my bad.
Jackson Arnold has a chance to really be good. He started off well last year at Oklahoma. He struggled. I think he started pressing. He had, I heard Brooks talk about injuries and suspensions and a couple of players getting kicked off at Georgia. I mean, the entire wide receiver room disappeared in the middle of the season for Oklahoma. I've never seen a team that was in so much trouble at that position. So I really like Jackson, and I apologize for taking a second to remember that he is going to be the guy. Thank you, John. Thank you very, very much. Susie is up next in Georgia. Hello, Susie.
Good afternoon, Paul. Yeah, that was some game last night with Georgia and the Gators. What I noticed when you were showing the films, of them holding the students back, what concerned me, did you see that one student that fell as they were rushing?
No.
Yeah, when he showed the thing, and you can see, I mean, he could have been easily trampled. He was like down on his knees, and he grabbed his phone, and he was a big guy, and he got up, and I thought, oh my God, with all, that's why they worry about that. But I didn't realize that they had to leave the court, then you could let them storm. So that was interesting today. I appreciated that bit of info. I wanted to make a comment to Iman, and I've made that comment every time I call that I'm praying for you. And Legends, I'm really concerned about your hearing. I think you're having troubles with, and possibly other things. So, my Black Cat brother, I am lifting prayers for you. But Iman, when you talked today, and it was good to hear your voice, I can hear a weakness in your voice, and certainly with what you've been going through in your treatments. And I just want you to keep up the positive vibes and the faith. And I appreciate that you did not let what Jim said to you take its toll, because you don't need things to bring you down and to think, you need your strength, you need your positivity. And just listen to all of us that are calling and giving that to you, because we certainly are praying. I lost my husband to cancer, my best friend to cancer. I just lost a good guy friend in January, and I've got another good guy friend of my girlfriend's who's got acute leukemia, and he's battling, and he's positive, and it works. So, Iman, stay tough, buddy. Keep calling. And one last thing, Paul, have you heard from Larry lately?
No.
Okay, because I missed last week because I was out of town. So I always worry about Larry, too, certainly with his house. So, Larry, I'm thinking about you. Paul, I appreciate you taking my call. And Tanner, your call yesterday was the best I've heard in a long, long time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Brad in Macon right now. I had a feeling we'd hear from Brad today. Hey, Brad.
Hey, Paul. How you doing? I can't hear you, but I was going to tell you that you have found another enabler in this guy, Brooks Austin. And, hey, man, that stuff he's saying about Bobo, let me tell you something, Brooks. I think that shirt you were wearing, where you had it buttoned up all the way up to your neck, I think it cut the oxygen to your brain, because you're messing it up on Bobo. And I'm telling you right now, Brooks, Bobo gave up 10 points before halftime on that Notre Dame game with a young quarterback. Instead of running off the clock and going into halftime down 3-0, we go in there down 13. That's on Bobo. Don't make excuses for him. That's the Bobo the Bozo move. And that pass, that little flip play he made in the championship game against Alabama, setting them up right by our end zone. They scored a touchdown. That was on Bobo. Poor play calling in crucial times is what he's known for. He cannot do it. So I don't want to hear excuses about Bobo. And who do I like? Who's out there that I like? I like Georgia Tech's OC. Get Buster down here to Georgia. I like Texas A&M's OC, Klein, quarterback from Kansas State. He's brilliant. Get him down here. I'll take him too. But don't make excuses for Bobo and all that mess you were talking about. That don't make no sense to me. And so, Paul, hey, man, I can't hear you, but you take care, brother. I'll holler at you.
Well said. That's outstanding call. And again, we have guests on here because they're experts. Doesn't mean we agree, but we want to make sure every side is heard on a story. Let's move along. Billy is up next. Hello, Billy.
Hey, Paul. How are you today?
We are doing great. Thank you.
Good. I was calling to give my 2 cents worth on Jim. He's helpless, and until he wants to help himself, then there's an avenue for him to repent and believe in Jesus and be saved. Man, I'm praying for you, buddy. I hadn't seen you in several years, but we used to run together down in Montgomery. Legend, I'm praying for you, buddy. I noticed you've been having some problems, too. I've been away for a while, but I'm back in action now. 2 other things quickly, Paul, on the point spread guy. Have you ever heard of the book, The Anatomy of a Sports Betting Handicap?
Is that the one that Billy Walters wrote?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know. That gives you all the answers.
I know Billy. Yeah, we've had him on the show a couple of times.
I know Billy too. I sure do. There's a good writing in that book there about Phil Mickelson.
Oh yeah. Yeah, by the way, I'm glad you mentioned that, Billy, because we had him on, I think, twice, and Billy is the most famous gambler of all time.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Billy, you be well. You take care of yourself. We head to the end of the hour. Busy show so far, and we are not done yet. We still have 2 hours to go. We hope you'll stick around.